What's up, everybody? I got Pat here. We're going to jump into a development deal that he's worked on for our deal segment. This is going to be a meatier one, I think, than many of our deal kind of segment deep dives here, where it's like we bought multifamily property, we renovated, we leased up, successful outcome, learned a couple things. I think this is going to be really interesting, and I'm excited to chat about this. So let's start with describing the property, or I guess in this situation, maybe the site or the lot, market, lot size, proposed build, kind of the big kind of bullet points here.
Sure. So this is a site on Cape Cod, over 20 acres. A local or regional developer bought it several years ago and have been going through the 40B process. Are you aware what that is?
I was just going to ask if you could dive into that. Yeah.
Yes. So 40B is something where if a town doesn't have a certain amount of housing in their municipality that are deemed affordable, developers can come in and use this state process to relieve them of certain zoning obligations, and it just allows it's a mechanism to get more housing built. And so they took advantage of that, got it fully approved, and then went to sell it.
And then that's where you guys came in on that? Yeah.
Well, I paused because I didn't know if I should keep on going. So the first time I saw it actually was after they got it approved, and someone messaged me through social media and asked me to take a look at it. I had a meeting with the owners. They asked for terms that I couldn't meet. Mm-hmm. And then maybe like 4 months later, it came out with a broker, like it became widely marketed. And I had done this initial homework, so that was helpful. And then I made it to the final round, and they picked us, and here we are.
Got it. And then in terms of like size of like what you guys are planning to build, and that's the only other thing too there.
Yeah, so 300 units, 5 buildings, wood frame with elevators, slab on grade, all surface parking, and then a separate clubhouse.
Got it.
For the amenity building.
So it seems like that's like down the middle of the fairway type of construction for you guys.
Yeah, yeah, that's how we started. That's a preferred method, especially just because it's lower cost.
Yeah, exactly. Got it. We talked about how you found it. What price? So the question I usually ask is, what price did you buy it? But I believe you guys are still under contract here. And if you got to hold some info back, feel free. But yeah.
Yeah, it was a marketed deal, so it's not like we stole it. But it was at a number that was reasonable to us, that was in line with comps in the market. Like I was saying earlier today when I was speaking with you, another institutional developer built on the Cape, and there were some like South Shore land sale comps, and so we were in the range.
Got it. And this is an aside. This is more of a broad development question. Like nomenclature or just quick conversation, like how do you define, how you even talk about, what you, like the price that you have something like a project like this under contract?
Per unit is how we look at it.
Per approved unit, right? Or entitled
per
unit,
unit,
rather.
Yeah, per unit. So this, and the reason we in my kind of niche talk about that because you usually make an offer before the approvals. So this one's like a little different because it was fully approved, but usually you go into it before you know exactly how many units you're going to have, and you're both buyer and seller motivated to get more units because of economies of scale for the buyer, and then for the seller they want more money. And so you make an offer on a per unit basis because you only are going to pay for the units typically that you get
that
approved
and
become, they can charge rent for and everything. And then there's usually a floor because the sellers don't want you to tie it up and then build a 20 unit project when you told them you were going to build 200. Yeah. And it's kind of, you have a goal, like a target.
Got it. Makes sense. Capitalization here. So let's talk about, how you guys are, I guess, planning here, or I'm sure this is already like, in process. You're starting to get, march towards closing here in some capacity, but debt, equity, and we never really talked about this in the first episode we recorded, but obviously you guys are working with private investors. I mean, is the investor kind of prototype, ultra high net worth individual, more retail folks, kind of family office money? So I guess at a high level, how do you guys plan to finance and structure this one? And then maybe some commentary on where the equity typically comes from.
Yes. What I mentioned earlier to you is that our platform has a more specialized model, and so we have a capital markets team that does exactly this, both the debt and equity side. The debt is traditional bank financing, and then on the equity side, it's typically other institutions, pension funds.
Got it.
Worked with some family offices. I think one of our Boston deals was a family office, but it's a range of the typical players you see kind of investing in institutional sized multifamily deals.
Yep. Business plan. So, obviously we're talking about building 300 some odd unit or 300 units here. Is it going to be market rate, affordable components? What's the end use?
So this was 40B, like I mentioned, and one of the requirements that I maybe left out of there is they allow you to sidestep some zoning as long as you include at least typically 25% affordable units. And so of the 300 units, 25% are deemed affordable based on a certain percent of the local AMI in perpetuity.
Is it like 80% or 50%?
It's
or
80.
80?
This deal's 80, yeah.
Gotcha. That's actually 25% and 80% is not terrible. Just in terms of what I know guys are typically building to, like where they're getting some of this, property tax relief in New Hampshire. It's usually some component at 50 or something like that. But got it. That makes sense. What's gone better than expected, I guess, after you've gone under contract?
The ability to make some changes in the site plans. So we, like I said, this was fully approved, but during due diligence, we did some homework and found ways to make the design more efficient. And so we had to go back to the planning board and ask for some changes. And, our land use attorney told us a wide range of how long it might take, and it was like approved on the spot. And it kind of supported what the sellers had told us in the beginning, was that the town really wanted this to happen, which isn't always the case. Yeah. And I think part of the reason is that, coming back to 40B, if you get above that 10% threshold, which this project was going to help them do, people can't use 40B to build more projects. So like a lot of towns will strategically, I think local people call it like friendly 40B, will strategically like work with certain developers with certain land that are trying to get approved, and like help them get somewhere where both sides are happy, and then we'll like lift them out of the 10%, and then they can kind of like not be open to that.
Yeah, so it's like this one project checks that box for that type of project in some ways, right? Where it's like, we're going to build this, and then this isn't going to be a discussion point within this town. Yeah. In the future, so to speak. Is that the thought process?
Using 40B, they might have zoning that allows for housing in other parts of town.
But specifically,
but 40B like lets you kind of do anything anywhere, and so once you're above 10%, people don't have that power anymore.
Makes sense. What has gone maybe worse than expected after you've gone under contract?
Honestly, this deal's gone pretty smooth. I guess the worst thing.
I'm gonna knock on wood, even though the mics are gonna pick it up. Yeah.
I guess there was an appeal, like the very last day of the last approval, not site plan, that one's done, but it was a wastewater treatment plant needed a certain approval, and on the very last day there was an appeal, and we're working through it, but it just extended the timeline, or might extend the timeline a little bit.
But it doesn't seem like a massive snag in and of itself, other than
no, we don't think it's going to kill the deal at all. It's just we think it's going to be a process, and again, like add time.
Yeah, exactly. End result, I mean, obviously you guys have yet to close, but it seems like this is going to be a build, lease up, sell situation.
Potentially, depends on who our equity partner is. They're usually the one that determines whether we stabilize it and sell it so they can recycle their capital or not. Like I was telling you earlier, there's one deal in suburban Mass up in Wakefield that we own and operate, and we refinanced a couple of years ago, and so it's just in the portfolio. But we'll see. We're excited about this one. It's a unique market, and I think there's a lot of demand. And we're going
a lot of barriers to entry down there on the Cape for housing, especially rental housing. So
something that we learned throughout this process is like a very large percent of people that work, even though the Cape doesn't have this like huge, crazy growing employment base like closer to Boston, so many people commute onto the Cape for work that even if we capture a small percent of those people, like we could fill the building like this. And we're assuming that most people want to live closer to where they work. They just don't have the options. And so we're going to be providing like this new option for people to live.
Yeah, and then as you mentioned earlier, and as we talked about in the first episode there, like you also have the comp of a similar build being leased up, and there being demand and all of that, which further supports that thesis.
Exactly.
You may have just touched on it, but maybe you have another takeaway or lesson here. But what's been your biggest lesson or takeaway, either positive or negative, from this deal?
Well, so another challenge I didn't mention is that there's rent control proposed in Massachusetts right now.
I was waiting for that one to get.
Yeah. And so that we're waiting to see how that plays out, and we've adjusted our underwriting and think we're like looking at things in a conservative way and kind of underwrite in the worst case scenario of what could happen there, and it's still a strong deal even with those things considered. Obviously, that's not ideal, and that's definitely a challenge we're working through. But then there's some other kind of exciting things happening in the state, like they're I think considering a sales tax exemption on building material, which could be helpful. And they have some new laws that are moving the certain processes forward. We were past that on this deal, but like there's some other deals we're working on where like the MIPA environmental review process can be fast forwarded if you hit certain criteria. So there's some good things happening too.
Yeah. Well, and it seems as if, I'm like, I don't want to make predictions here that end up not being true and then I look stupid, but it's trending towards rent control not passing in November based on all the preliminary voting and all of that, right? Again, we all hope. But even if so, I think, and you probably even know this better than I do, even though I live in Mass, but we only invest in New Hampshire, but the proposed legislation has some type of exemption, right, for new development. It's
10 years.
It's a down the line, you still have to underwrite that.
Sure.
And a buyer, if you guys are selling it, is still going to underwrite that.
That's the more important thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The buyers of all the newly developed housing have to operate it, right? Or, newly developed rental housing still have to operate it. So it impacts, maybe buyer demand and stuff like that. But we are trending in the right direction for that not to pass is, all the smart Massachusetts guys who are scared every day when they wake up seem to really believe that, and maybe it's a cope, but preliminary like polling seems to be, I don't know, positive in that respect. But anyways, who knows? We hope it goes well in November.
Yeah, everyone listening to this should donate if you can.
Yeah, right. All right, man, this has been great. Thanks again for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
For the audience, Pat's information is going to be in the show notes, as well as info for DealNav, of which we're a subscriber of and which we use on a daily basis. And then if you're a real estate professional who's playing in the development space or looking at land in the Northeast, certainly reach out. I mean, it seems like you guys are ready, willing, and able to pursue new projects. So
we are open for business.
Love it. Awesome, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.